Hey, this is Jerry Roberts again, and this is the third part of our session on communication and meaning. As you saw, I had a few technical difficulties at the end of that last video, requiring me to kind of move on and start another video. I thought that'd be easier than starting from scratch. So this is part 3, and we're going to continue talking about the just some issues related to meaning as it relates to intercultural communication. Now, you've already seen this model of communication one time. You'll be seeing it multiple more times. What I want to focus on this time is to look at there's one little area. You see a blue circle on the left and a green circle on the right, and in between the two of them, right there where you see the words channel message, you see a area that is dark blue or dark green. Actually, that's up to you to determine if it's dark blue or dark green. Isn't that messing with you? Anyway. But that dark area where it says channel message, that's the area of shared meaning. That's the area where communication can take place. And that area of shared meaning means that that's where the sender's field of experience and the recipient's or receiver's field of experience meet, and they have shared meaning there, allowing for communication to take place. Now, later on in the course, we're going to be talking about the fact that one of the great challenges and tasks of a cross-cultural communicator is the fact that they have to learn how to make that area of shared meaning larger and larger by moving further and further into the recipient's field of experience. And so the larger that area of shared experience is, the more possible communication there is. The smaller that area of communication is, the less chance of communication there is. So we have to be working to broaden that. But right now we're just talking about meaning and the fact that really, and once again, looking at this image, you can see there's a lot of areas in the sender's field of experience that are not shared with the receiver's field of experience. And that's the areas where there might be differences in the understanding of meaning, because symbol and meaning are not automatically the same. We already talked about in the earlier lecture the question of the swastika, the Uggenskrust is called by the Latvians. That symbol does not have a meaning all on its own. That symbol has a meaning as it is culturally assigned. The culturally assigned meaning that we see in our day is the idea that it represents Nazi Germany and all the things they did. The cultural assigned meaning in Latvia and in parts of India, it still is a symbol of hope and prosperity. So that's one illustration. Another illustration in a more modern, up-to-date times would be I try not to repeat my illustrations, but I teach this class on campus as well. So if I'm repeating this, please feel free to fast forward past it. But in more modern times, we've seen a shift in the meaning of a symbol that was a very common symbol for thousands of years, and that's the symbol of the rainbow. Literally for thousands of years, those in the Judeo-Christian worldview have had an interpretation of the rainbow or the rainbow symbol as representing God's mercy in the midst of God's wrath. The story of the rainbow originated with the story of Noah after he landed back on after God had judged the earth and flooded the earth. The rainbow became a symbol of God's mercy in the fact that he spared Noah and his family, and a promise that God's mercy that he is not going to destroy the world again by flood. And so this rainbow has this message that's attached to it for literally, hundreds of years at least, thousands of years more likely, because the story of Noah, the dating of the story of Noah, is probably somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 BC. So there's this symbol, the rainbow. In recent years, just in the past maybe 5 to 7 to 10 years, another group has borrowed the symbol of the rainbow and used it to represent something entirely different. The rainbow symbol has become a symbol of the movement of homosexual activists, of those who want to maintain the idea of sexual identities that each person can choose their own sexual identity, and they use the rainbow to represent that all of us may see white, bright light, but in fact there's many different colors in the rainbow. And so they use that to represent the idea that this symbol shows that all these different colors are all part of the same thing. Now, I'm not really trying to discuss that particular issue at this moment. If you'd like to discuss that with me by email or give me a call, I'd love to discuss that with you, because it's a very interesting worldview change that has taken place in Western culture about that. But for me, the issue of this particular course is the symbol. Because now, if you are on Facebook or on one of your other social media sites and you see a person's picture with a rainbow over it, more than likely you're not going to assume that they're talking about the story of Noah and God's mercy. Now, if you see a rainbow over a picture or something like that, or you see a rainbow image being portrayed, the meaning of that symbol, the meaning assigned to that symbol, now represents a person who is in support of same-sex marriage, in support of all of the different sexual orientations being just widely accepted and being seen all as equal and things like that. So the meaning of the symbol of the rainbow has changed just in the last 5 to 10 years, just within our culture. Now, it might be other places that it's kind of seen that as well, maybe in Japan or other places that are highly technologically involved, but there are places where the rainbow still doesn't mean that, because they have not had that change and shift in meaning take place. But you can see that if I go on now and I decide on Facebook to put a rainbow over one of my pictures because I really appreciate God's covenant, then another person could say, wow, what does that mean? What are you representing by that rainbow? Because now the symbol of the rainbow and the meaning of that rainbow are culturally determined even in our day. So, for communication to occur, number two, there have to be some level of agreement on the meaning of symbols and words. And that's what I was talking about with that area of shared experience and shared meaning. You have to agree with the word meaning. I just said that 3 times. If you don't agree with the word meaning, and you think the word meaning means meat, then we're not going to be able to communicate very well. I have to be able to know that when you see that word on this screen, that you accept the same meaning of it as I do. Number 3, noise is always present, and a communicator works to reduce its impact. There is noise all the time. There's always going to be noise. There's going to be emotional noise. There's going to be physical noise. There's going to be noise because of mannerisms, because of locations. I prefer to lecture while I'm standing up, for instance. And I know that while I am doing these lectures, I've had a tendency to rock back in the chair when I'm making a certain point. That's because I'm not able to use my typical recording area that I normally record, and I'm having to record these videos in someone's office. So I know that if you've been paying a lot of attention, you've noted me rocking back and forth in my chair. Well, I hope that's not a distraction to you, but it could be. You could start looking at that and noticing every time I rock back in my chair. Don't do that. Stop it. Anyway, but there's always noise present. As a communicator, we try to do everything we can to reduce the impact of that noise. Number 4, style and context affects meaning. The best way I can explain the issue of style would be to explain a difference in perceptions on how public communications could take place. For instance, in the Far East, one of their greatest cultural values has to do with calmness and sereneness and peacefulness. If you see these images of the gurus of the East, you always see them as people who are sitting on the ground, wearing their simple clothing, and when they speak very quietly. Quietly, that's not a word. Anyway, you speak very peacefully, very serenely. They're always saying things in a very quiet and mellow voice, and because in their worldview, that serene nature, that quiet, that calm, represents a person of high quality. A person of high moral standing is a person who's quiet and serene. Now, we've had Americans who go into these settings and they bring with them their cultural views on communication. And some of the American cultural views of communication, especially among Pentecostals, Charismatics, some groups that tend to be more boisterous, our communication style tends to be very forceful. A preacher will get up and he'll begin going on about the Word of God is a sword, and it cuts asunder the body from the bone from the marrow, and it tears down principalities and powers. Okay, you can see we accept that as being boisterous. We accept that as somebody who's highly energetic, who has a strong, maybe strong feelings about the point they're making. However, in the Far East, that person is looked at as a person who lacks calmness, who lacks emotional control. A person like that might even be considered a little insane, because they're not able to control their emotions and keep that calm demeanor that they think is so valuable. So even our style can have an impact on how people understand the meaning of what we're trying to communicate. Number 5, the relationship between the source and the receptor affects meaning, and that's a pretty obvious thing. I can say things to my best friend that I wouldn't say to a stranger that I meet at JCPenney. I can say things to my wife that I wouldn't say to the president of our college. I can say, there's this relationship. My family, we do a lot. We say sarcasm is our love language, and so we have a lot of sarcastic and kind of picking at each other, and that's how we kind of show friendship and relationship. As a matter of fact, it's a situation where if you know me very well, you'll know that if I'm not picking on you, I probably don't know you well enough yet. If I really feel like I know you pretty well, I'm probably going to pick on you, because that's just one of the communication styles. And I've got a good friend of mine that I look over and say, I'm looking at pictures of his family, and I would say, "Wow, you've sure got some good-looking kids. Luckily, they take after your wife." Okay, now that's a sarcastic, kind of halfway mean thing to say, but he's a good friend of mine, and we pick at each other, and he'll say something mean back to me, and honestly, it's a lot how guys communicate. We kind of communicate through insults. Weird, I know, but that's American guys. That's just how we tend to communicate and such. So anyway, but that relationship, I wouldn't say that to somebody I just met at JCPenney. I wouldn't walk up and say that to them. That would be weird, but the level of relationship, and that will be true when you're in cross-cultural settings as well. Relationship between you and the person you're talking to is going to determine how they perceive what you're saying. And finally, ultimately, is the receptor that determines the meaning of communication for themselves. I can do everything I can. I can use words. I can use illustrations. I can use these PowerPoints. I can use all of these things. But you're still the one that's going to decide what the meaning of what I've just communicated is. And so as a communicator, my job is to do everything I can to reduce noise and help you to be sure you understand it. Hopefully, you'll be sending me some emails, give me some feedback so you can know what you're getting. I'll definitely get feedback when you do the exam here in a couple of weeks, and I'll know whether you understood what I was communicating or not. But understand, it is the recipient, and that's the reason it's the communicator's job is so challenging, to make sure that the recipient of the message gets it. Now, what I want to end with on this particular one is another thing I want you to send me an email about, and this is our first 24-hour challenge. These 24-hour challenges, I'm going to have 2 or 3 of them throughout the semester. This is not a pass-fail assignment. You're not even going to get a grade on it. This is just another way for you to explore cross-cultural communication. Because one of the greatest tools in intercultural communication is simply awareness, paying attention. Paying attention to what's going on around you, paying attention to what people are talking about. Paying attention is so valuable in intercultural communication. So for the next 24 hours, I want you to really pay attention to this one issue, and that is for the next 24 hours, I don't want you to talk about anything that you have watched. Don't talk about movies, TV shows, YouTube videos, Facebook, Snapchat. Don't even talk about this video. For 24 hours, I want you to really pay attention to what's going on around you and hear what other people are talking about, something that they've watched. Choose to not involve yourself in that conversation. Choose to not say, "Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that cat video that did such a," For 24 hours, you're not going to talk about cat videos or the video of the guy falling off the hill or whatever else. For 24 hours, I want you to focus on it. And first of all, I want you to see if it's a challenge to you or not to not talk about things that you've watched. And I want you to also be aware of those around you and see how much they're talking about things they have watched. If they ask you why you're not talking about it, tell them you're part of some strange scientific experiment. That'll be a very entertaining conversation starter. And it'll keep you from talking about something you've watched. But this is not pass-fail. If you mess up after 1 hour, jot down that you messed up and try again. And keep for at least 24 hours, try not to talk about anything you've watched. And then send me a quick email and say, "Man, that was absolutely crazy. I had no idea how much time I spent talking about what I watched, or how much time my friends talked about what they watched." Or you can write and say, "Hey, surprisingly enough, I really didn't hear that being talked about a whole lot." And so But either way, you're going to be observing this and then sending me an email. Maybe we can interact on it a little bit. So accept the 24-hour challenge and look forward to our next lecture when we get to move forward discussing more on our cross-cultural communication efforts.